Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another VFX stream. Um, I, I hopefully everything's working okay because I was meant to click off the starting soon icon and I clicked stop streaming, which was completely the wrong thing to do. So hopefully I'm coming through okay. Let me know if you're out there and you can hear me okay and the audio is sounding good. Today I'm going to continue working on the slime kind of effect that I was working on last week because I thought there's probably some more interesting things that we can do with it. If you don't remember what that was, that is this kind of weird animated, let me just tick on load from disk here. This weird kind of animated creeping slime ball, inspired by the Stranger Things exploding rat sequence. And if you haven't seen that first part, hey Audrey, how you going? If you haven't seen that first part, then there's a link in the description where you can access the first part of this. That's right, the return of the evil dinner. We'll try and make it more evil. And there were a few problems that I had in the render from last week. If you remember, there was some popping going on in towards the end here. So we can have a look at what was causing that as well. It's not too bad, but it does happen every so often, and I'm pretty sure it's the boolean that I was doing. Yo, what's up, Robert? How you going? Cookies and cream, that's right. Or custard and obsidian, I think, as Adam mentioned last week. So I can't remember where I haven't opened this all week, but here's the boolean going on here in the goo ball, which was to try and remove the, to create these kind of internal. Hey John, how you going? Welcome. Thanks for joining me. So yeah, the boolean was there to try and create that internal shadow casting geometry. Good morning, John. Good afternoon or good evening to you. I've got my coffee. So yeah, this boolean was there to create internal casting geometry, which shows up on the render as being a nice sort of, I guess, internal shadow. But occasionally it breaks. And you can see the full kind of geometry coming through. So if we go to I don't know what frame that is, 110 or 109, because I only rendered every second frame. Let's have a look and see if we can see where this is breaking. I can't remember if I fixed it actually, but let's see. So 110, 109 maybe. Let's have a look. Let's see if we can find where that's breaking. Maybe I fixed it. I did take a look at it after the stream, and I may have fixed something. I can't remember what I did. If I did fix it, doesn't seem to be occurring anymore. Let's just scrub through a little bit. Well, that's interesting. No, it doesn't seem to be doing it. Boolean is a funny kind of node, you know, it sometimes can be a little tricky like this, where sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't feel like I did anything and then saved this file, but it's possible that I perhaps created this offset here in the convert with the ISO value to try and alleviate some of those issues. Or I may have, if we go back to the chunks, let's just have a look at where these are. Let's see where that is. That's here. Did I do anything there? Nah. Didn't do anything there different from last week. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why that's not doing that now. I'm pretty sure I didn't change anything. Oh well, good. It may come back at some point. We might not notice until we render again. So we've got our chunks, we've got our goo ball. let's just set that back there like that. And we've got our slime effect as well, which is over the top of everything. It's leaving the trail and it's kind of holding everything together. But I don't really know what to add. If you guys have any ideas, I was kind of thinking of like some little, you know, sort of spidey webby kind of things shooting out from this, kind of like the Vellum, sort of not Vellum, although we could use Vellum, the Venom type effect, you know, where it kind of shoots out little sort of gooey webs from it. I thought that could be kind of interesting. But if anyone has any wacky ideas, you know, we can try and do those too. Could even try some, like, I thought some just squirting flip fluid, you know, every so often randomly from different places could be an interesting thing to try as well. Might be a bit too gross maybe, but toxic gas. Where would the toxic gas come from? Just all over, or do you think it would like kind of bubble out from this thing maybe? Or just a more generic hazy sort of effect around the whole thing. Yeah, I'm thinking some kind of like bubble or like a fart cloud. Just from the back maybe. Throw a chip forward and pull itself. Yeah, well that could be interesting, John. I mean, that's kind of what I'm, you know, thinking that, yeah, like a bubble, and when the burst gas could come out. Yeah. Totally. I think that would be cool. Let's try that first, and then we can have a look at. It's alright. I know what you mean, Audrey. Let's take a look at that and see if we can do something like that, because that's kind of along the lines of what I was imagining. And then maybe, John, we can take a look at throwing one of these chunks out. Maybe that could be really cool. I'm not entirely sure how we would do that, but yeah, let's have a look at that. So where are we going to start? Let's go to our setup first of all and see what we have. So we've got our goo ball, which is our internal thing. Maybe we can use that, but we probably want to start from maybe before we create the slime, so that then any change that we do or any bubble that we make maybe gets adjusted in the slime layer. I don't know, let's just have a click around and see what we've got here. So here's our sort of our original goo ball, which is the sort of rayed wrapped version of the original sphere, which is rayed on top of the chunks to create that kind of shrink wrapped effect. So probably around there somewhere, maybe even here. This is where we could start the bubbling. And let's have a think about how we could do that. One thing that might work well is to we've got this point deform here, which is sort of deforming this, you know, this original sphere. What do I want to do? Maybe I'll copy this point deform. Or actually, let's see. I think what I'll do is I'll start at this frame from here, from this goo ball, because I'm doing like some peaks and smooths and a few deformations and things. It might be better off taking it from here than way up here before I do all these rays and stuff. So maybe I'll create a new geometry container instead of doing this all in one. Make it a bit clearer. So I'm going to object merge the goo ball. So out goo ball. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to start at frame 1 and I'm going to time shift this and just freeze that there. And I'm going to scatter points on this. So this is going to be like the kind of genesis of where my bubbles come from. The reason I'm doing it on a time shift frozen kind of sphere at the start is that if I do this on an animated sphere, the points will jump around a lot. You can see every frame they sort of move around, which is not great for when you're trying to create effects. So if I do this on a static and then maybe use a point deform, or even let's just go back and check and see if we have consistent topology here. I think we do. Let's see. So if I middle click, can't see that. So let me just do this. Here we go. So if I pin this and refresh and scrub, I can see that my topology is not changing. So that's good. That's great for, you know, for creating effects. Changing topology always makes things slightly more difficult. So I'm just going to call this bubble FX. And that means that we can use the attribute interpolate node to interpolate these points. I usually quite often use point deform, but when you have geometry that is consistent, you can use the attribute interpolate, which is a little bit faster, but I guess less flexible, because it does mean that you do definitely have to have consistent topology, because it uses these source prim and source prim UV attributes, and if they change, then the mapping of which point belongs where breaks. So I'm going to turn these two things on the scatter, source prim UV. That stores those attributes on the scatter. So you can see that there. And then the attribute interpolate pulls that. So I've fed in there to the second input the source of attributes to interpolate, which is essentially the animated. And you can see now those points follow along, which is awesome. So if I was to copy 2 points, copy 2 points onto there, target points to copy to, sphere, just to start visualizing what our bubbles might look like. There we go. So now we've got this kind of sphere monster. Thanks, Ujapal. I quite like the shine on my head. I shined it up especially for you this morning. So you can see that the balls sort of travel along with, you know, with this. And if I was to animate these over time, we could get some kind of, you know, bubble growing, and then eventually we have to work out how that's going to pop and then turn that back into a VDB or something. So let's have a look at how we can start to think about this animation. And I'm thinking that we do the whole effect maybe on the static geometry and then transfer it at the end, which may mean that we do have to go back to using a point deform. But let's have a look. So I think maybe let's try feeding it a particle and see if that works. So I'm going to set my pop source to points, and then we're going to birth some points on this, and we're just going to have them live like really short amount of time. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so let's go 0.5, 0.5. So what we should see coming out of this is like some random sort of particle behavior. Let me think. I need to take my birth rate down, so I'll just take that down pretty low. And there we go. So if I was to copy spheres onto that, let's just take this back like this. So now I've got this kind of random. Yeah, that's right. This is the strange things stream. So you know, it's bound to get weird. The weirdness in the comments matches the weirdness of my effects. So what I'm going to do here to create the kind of growing and popping effect of the bubble is to take I'm going to just put down an attribute VOP. I'm going to take the life of this thing, or the age. So I'm going to do age divided by life to create normalized age. And I'm going to run this through a ramp. And this is going to be a spline ramp. And I'm going to bind export that to p-scale. So like that, and fit. So let's have a look at what this does for us. Nothing at the moment, and our ramp is probably set to just 0, which is a weird default behavior for these ramps, but whatever. So let's take a look, and I guess we'll just set that to 0 to 1 to begin with. There we go. Here we go. So now we can see we've got some growing behavior, which is cool. And hopefully, let's see if we're getting these source prim and source prim UV attributes come through. So if I plug this into the attribute interpolate, hopefully those particles will kind of go along for the ride. There we go. That's cool. Let's plug the copy to points in there. Hey, look at that. I didn't, you know, I just kind of make this stuff up as I go along. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And that's quite cool that it works like that. So let's merge that back in with our original mesh. Whoops. And there we go. So now we've got this kind of growing and popping bubble. And the reason it just sort of, it pops off like that is because it's just sort of doing this linear growth. And then at that point, when the sphere is its biggest size, it dies. Hey, Rizwan, you made fire come out of your land speeder. That's cool. I'd love to see it if, you know, you talk about it every week. I'd love to see what it looks like. If you can share a link or something, if you've uploaded it, I'd love to see what it looks like. Did you do that in Lightwave, Rizwan? How did you go with the fire in Lightwave? So yeah, when it gets to its maximum age, it gets its maximum size, and then it pops off and dies. So it kind of looks like a bubble bursting. So if we took the, you know, the VDB, let's say, let's do that. Let's go back to our goo ball, and we've got this VDB step here, which we're combining with the particles from the floor. And, oh, let's see, actually the goo ball is the thing that we're rendering here. So perhaps what we should do is maybe merge in the spheres with that. So let's go, maybe we'll output these, null, like that, out, bubbles. And let's see, what do I want to do here? I'm going to make this a polygon mesh. So out bubbles, and then go to my goo ball and object merge, out bubbles. I'm going to do a VDB from polygons. And yes, you did it in Lightwave for example. Yeah, you made fire. Oh, so you did a sprite sort of fire simulation where you use particles and made it look like fire. Cool, that's good. It's a nice, efficient way to do it. We used to do that stuff all the time. You know, back when doing fire was pretty expensive and the results weren't that good. We often used to use particles for fire. Nowadays, not so much. I mean, certainly in film, we usually need things to be a little bit higher resolution, but it's always good to, you know, good to know those tricks. I mean, in Lord of the Rings, I think in the second one, what would that one be? The Two Towers. There's the Balrog fight right at the start, where what's his name? Gandalf is fighting the Balrog, and they fall down, and this epic battle of him, you know, fighting the Balrog as they're falling. And I worked with someone who worked on that, and that was all done with sprite based fire, a lot of particle based stuff, because at that time, you know, there were some fluid simulation tools out there, but they weren't really that great, and they're very kind of difficult. Also with that, you know, like I talked about in one of my other streams, when I locked that beast head from the Rookies shot, when I locked that in place so that we could do an animation on a locked animated geometry, that's another challenge. You know, when you've got something falling through, trying to do a fluid simulation of that would be really hard. So maybe doing that as particles was easier for them at the time. So here we go. We've got that sort of thing happening, and let's convert that back to polygons. So then we'll get it all kind of together in one mesh. So we can see now we've got these kind of bubbles, which is cool. Although the way it pops off, you know, perhaps we could make that kind of a little bit cooler. One thing I'm thinking that we could do is we might actually be able to animate this effect to have like a popping sort of animation, perhaps. I don't know. What could we do there? We could, let's see, what could we do? If I make this a polygon instead, so it's triangular, I'm thinking about sending this into Vellum. I don't know if this will work. Let's see. What could I do? Instead of having these die like this, what I'm going to do on my popnet is turn off reap particles. And what reap particles does is it removes... Rizwan, can I send a screenshot in the chat? I don't think you can do that. Yeah, I don't know. You can give it a shot. I don't think so, though. I don't think you can do that with these chats. So what read particles does is it removes particles when they register an attribute, and that attribute is the dead attribute. So basically, when age equals life, the particles die and they get removed because of that reap particle step. But if you leave it on and have a look at the result in the geometry spreadsheet, you've got this dead attribute here, and when that registers, I have to recache this to see the result. When that registers 1, that is when the particle would ordinarily be removed. And when it's 0, it's alive. So you can see there's a whole lot of dead particles there, but they're still there now because I turned off that reap step. So we'll just be left with a lot of particles, which means that, you know, we're not going to get our bubbles are just going to be kind of consistent and they're going to overlap each other. So we'll end up with a lot of spheres on top of each other. But I do have that dead attribute still. So I can actually blast and say at dead greater than 0, let's say. And that will then show me all of the dead ones. And then if I do delete non-selected, I'll get my kind of, I'll get everything else, hopefully. Oh, I need to set that to points. So let's go delete non-selected. Oh, there we go. So that one is like kind of what we had. And then the opposite is everything. You can see as they die, that's when they go into this kind of group, the non-selected group. You can see this one kind of growing up in the template here. And then at the point that it dies, it goes into this group. So I'm actually going to put that into a split here. And one side at dead. So let's do at dead greater than 0. Set the group type of points. So one side will be the dead ones, and the other side. So okay, out dead. Out dead. And out live. So you may be wondering why the hell I'm doing all this, and hopefully it will become clear soon. So what I want to do at the frame that they die, at the frame that they switch from being alive to dead, and only for one frame, I'm going to send that into Vellum. But first, I need to create some sort of way of only keeping it for one frame. And the best way to do that would be to create a little counter in the popnet. Points to play with, yeah. So I'm going to create a little counter here using a bit of a wrangle. So pop wrangle. And I'm going to say if at dead is greater than 0, I at I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter what this is called, I at count equals plus you can do, and that will just incrementally add value. Or you could do plus equals 1, you know, that would be fine as well. But plus should work for a counter. So let's see what this does. So we can check out the geometry spreadsheet. So once these particles register that value of 1 as dead, then the counter should start. You can see here the count is 0. And as I go through, oh, there we go. That one registers dead pretty much straight away. And that counter has started. And you can see those then. And watch these ones as they flick over. So you can see those counters going. So now I've got a counter for how long that has been dead for, which is really handy. Because what that allows me to do is, if I go back to my scene view, for these ones that are appearing when they die, if we have a look at this one, for example, this one here, let me just, I'll just select these points and then we can have a look at these in the geometry spreadsheet. View only show selected. I guess that's, oh, there we go. So you can see once it gets created, it's got that dead value of 1, and then it's got a count of 1 as well. And then on the next frame, it's count 2. So in theory, if I only keep it for that count of 1, and then delete it if the count is greater than 1, then it will be there for just 1 frame. So I'll put a blast node down and say at count greater than 1. Point group. There we go, got one. And look, so it grows up, it hits dead, it's on for 1 frame, and then it disappears. So what I can do with that is I can send that to a Vellum sim. So let's go and create a little Vellum configure cloth like this, and Vellum, yeah, I think that'll be right. So let's put down a Vellum solver. I'll just put down a SOP based solver first of all. Go back to the first frame. We probably don't want this bubble effect to start until a bit later, but let's just try it here. So I'll plug that in and let's see what happens. Maybe I need to turn on my ground plane. Advanced simulation forces solver. Where? Oh, there. So let's see if we get anything happening. And no, we don't. That may be because I don't know if this one can do animated inputs actually. So perhaps we will need to create our own Vellum solver, which isn't too difficult. Just plug those in like that. Vellum solver, Vellum object, Vellum source. Oops. Now, I don't want the Vellum object also brings in geometry, so I don't want it to bring anything in. So I'm just going to copy these inputs and paste them here. And what these input path expressions are is just grabbing the input of the solver. So that now should bring in those bubbles, but I need to set the emission type to continuous so that it updates and brings them in every frame that they get created. There we go. We should see the other ones get added. Hey, look at that. Cool. So let's put a gravity node down and put a ground plane as well. So we've got something to collide with. I don't know if this is going to be quite tricky once I, trying to get it integrating with everything, but let's see what happens. Yeah, there we go. So we got some crazy spheres happening. I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should do this Vellum stuff on the static geometry, because it might be really difficult to get this working with the animated stuff. So I'm thinking that maybe I should go all the way back up here and do this whole kind of bubble popping simulation on the static one first, and just see if I can get that working. So, and then, yeah, it's tricky effect. Let's have a look. Go in here, turn off gravity for a second, and I might, let's put on a, what is it, edge fracture. So what the edge fracture is going to do is when there's a sphere created, okay, it actually splits these along there. So if I turn this on, this primitive piece, and turn that visualizer on, you can see it actually splits the geometry up. So I'm thinking that that might be cool to get some bubble bursting behavior. So then if I check that out in the simulation, this is kind of, you know, overcomplicating things a little bit, but just to, you know, just to give you guys some interesting ideas about some of this stuff. Now what can we do? We need these to kind of burst. So I might just turn off the blast for a second so that I can see these a little clearer. So I want these to kind of burst open a little bit. So what I'm going to do there is, let's see, I might create a centroid. So extract centroid. They're collapsing on the ground plane. Yes, they are, John, but I mean, that is not the desired effect. The desired effect is going to be them kind of bursting and you know, not just falling down and collapsing. I just wanted to sort of test that the cloth was actually working, which it is. So I'm going to create a centroid here and an attribute wrangle. And I'm just going to do this. If I do v at p, yeah, exactly. I want them to sort of pop and burst, look a bit more interesting. So I'm going to do here v at v equals v at p minus, I'm going to use a point expression to access that second input. So 0.0 for the, actually 1 for the second input. P is the attribute that I want, and then at ptnum. Hopefully, if I create a marker, let's see if I did that right. Oh, not quite. Maybe I can't do that with the ptnum. Should just do 0. Ah, there we go. So there's only 1 point anyway, so I don't really need to do ptnum. So there we go. We've got like this velocity that's pointing outwards. So basically I've just subtracted the position of the sphere from the center position, and that gives me a vector pointing outwards. So that when I go into my .NET, hopefully what that will do is create like a bursting behavior. And we actually need to turn that dead back on, that blast. Oh, it's kind of doing something. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but you can see them kind of separating, which is interesting. Let's just crank this up a little bit. Times, I don't know, 5. Check that out. Ah, that's interesting. I suspect what might be happening here is if I actually get 2 of these, let me put this whole thing in brackets actually, maybe that might help. Ah, there we go. One of the issues might be is if we get 2 of these things happening at the same time, then yeah, you can see there. Because what's actually going to happen there is that we get a centroid between those 2 pieces. So let's try and do, we don't have anything here that we identify these as being separate, but we could try ID. No, it doesn't like that. Piece elements point ID. There we go. So we just need to switch that. So now we've got, oh, that doesn't quite work either. All right. So I'm going to just put this into a for each loop, which will make this a bit easier. For each named primitive. And what will I do? Here, I'll just create an assemble node. Is that what I want to do? Assemble. I'm going to have to turn this ID attribute into a name, I think, so that I can do this for each loop. So I'm going to just put an attribute wrangle down and say at name. Doesn't really have to be name, but just some sort of string that I can run. So at name equals bubble plus, I'm going to use the, oh, not that one. What was it? I to a converts an integer to a string. So I can say, I've got that ID attribute coming from the particle. So if I put ID in there, what that's going to do is give me this name attribute called bubble. If I go to a point where they're visible, oh, there we go. Must have selected turned on, there we go. So let's hide this and look at our name attribute that we just created. For each, get it on the centroid. Yeah, that's right. So that I can do this over each one. So there we go. If we have a look at these spheres and have a look at their ID attribute, you can see these all have the ID of 0 and all the way through to 8. And all I'm doing is just turning that ID into a string basically and appending it to this bubble. If I wanted to have a separator, I could do something like this where I do underscore like that and plus, and then I get an underscore in there. That sometimes makes it a little easier. So now I've kind of copied that ID into a string and I can use that in my for each loop here. I don't know if that was totally necessary, but anyway, it's a useful thing to do. So there we've got name. We actually probably should promote that to primitive. And then hopefully our for each loop will just work. Reset. Doesn't seem, oh, there we go, maybe. Name. This might just have needed to recalculate or something. There we go. All right. Sometimes it gets a little baked in and hard to change. So now I can do this. That hopefully will give me, for every one of these, a good centroid based velocity, which is cool. Run that into the edge. And in fact, I could do the edge fracture in there as well, which would be kind of nice. Although it seems to hate that for some reason. Possibly because there was nothing there. Anyway, that's okay. All right, so let's have a look at the .NET now. It's weird that they're collapsing inwards when I thought they should collapse outwards. Perhaps this velocity is actually going through itself rather than... Let's have a look at that. Let's take a look at these vels. No, they're pointing outwards. I think I created the correct marker type vector, yeah. I don't know what's going on there. It's kind of weird. Perhaps... It's like they kind of get it on the first frame, but it's not, maybe it's not strong enough still. I don't know. Let's crank it up a little more, times 10. Let's see what we get. No, well, I'm not sure what you're referring is a normals thing, John, but no, I mean, it's not a normals thing. That is actually probably would have been an easier way to create that velocity. I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, doing it based on centroid, that actually isn't necessary at all. So good call, and thanks for reminding me that I could have just done this, and that would have worked just as well. So that's just, yeah, case of overcomplicating for the sake of it. Oops, equals via n. There we go. So there we go, we get the same kind of result, basically. I don't know why I went for the centroid method. I guess the thing with normals is, you know, they have to be there and they have to be radial. Sometimes they're not always. So sometimes you do need to. I'm going to reverse this and see if it's kind of weird that it's pushing them inwards. If I times this by -10, let's see what happens. No, that's even worse. So yeah, I don't know why they're kind of not getting that that outward velocity, unless I'll just crank it up a lot and see if that kind of rips them apart. Yeah, no. It's really odd kind of behavior. That's unfortunate. One thing we could try is to do it in a SOP solver, I suppose. Yeah, weird. I don't know why they're doing that. It's really kind of bizarre. Edge fracture. Let's just take a look at this. So we could try doing something like this where we put a SOP solver in. Yeah, I don't know if more fractures would help. I mean, possibly. Just having it like be lots more little pieces. But it's just kind of, it's a bit of an odd directional behavior that I'm seeing that... Well, there you go. That more pieces certainly did it. Kablamo. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. Perhaps there's some kind of weird averaging thing that's happening inside the solver. That is kind of affecting that. The more pieces that you have kind of make that be a little less. That's cool. Okay, well, there you go. Thanks. Good suggestion. Let's see. I kind of don't want them to explode so much, so I guess I'll turn that down. Let's see what that looks like. Pop. It's kind of, if you know, I kind of don't want that many pieces, so maybe I'll just try and take this down to be as low as I can before it looks awful again. Let's go 15. Yeah, that's not too bad. All right. Let's see what this looks like on the animated geo. I suspect it'll kind of be a bit weird, but you know, why not? It's all about weirdness, this effect. So we should see these like start being emitted there. There we go. And they're actually, I think some of them are getting spawned below the ground plane, which is why they're bouncing up like that. The impulse from the ground plane collision is forcing them upwards. So we can turn the ground plane off. We don't have any gravity at the moment. So they're just kind of being created in space. So there we go. It's kind of interesting. Now, what else am I going to do here? Well, let's see what this looks like. Might kind of be interesting just to see what it looks like with the goo ball over the top. It's probably a little nuts, but yeah. So really we want the goo ball kind of motion, I think, to be a part of this as well, so that they don't just sort of be left behind. The thing is, these are not going to be visible the entire time. I really just want these to kind of pop and then maybe disappear. And the good thing is, we do have this count that is advancing on these. Should be. Let's have a look and see if it is. Maybe it stops when they get sourced. Let's see. Yeah. So it actually does stop once they get past this and go into the solver. They get that count value the moment that they're sourced, but then it doesn't continue to update. So we could just create another counter in here, and that that would be useful for telling them when to die as well. So what are we going to do? Let's create maybe... I'm going to... What do I want to do? Maybe I'll create a Vellum attached to geometry. Plug in the goo ball. I'm getting to the sound effects. I'm not feeling the effect enough yet to make my own sound effects for this one. I'm not really sure what that sound effect should be either. Target group, target path. So actually maybe I don't need to plug that in. I'll just do target path. Goo ball. No sound effects, no effect. Out goo ball for attach. Nice big long path for me to try and find. Okay. Alright, so I think I do need to I'll plug this in as the collision, just because I think that does sometimes help when you're visualizing the attachment constraint. So let's see if we see that. Oh, there's one. Yeah, see that? See that attachment that's being created there? So I think if I don't have that in there... Oh no, it still works. Oh, actually, no, sorry. If I don't have this in there, it doesn't display properly. So plug that through, and then I'm going to turn down or turn on this max distance, because I only want to constrain the parts of the bubble that are nearest that. Pop, 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 I think. The sound effect that I have in my head is kind of more gross, and I'm not really sure if I want to say it out loud, but because this is a kind of slimy bubble, and it will have a gas cloud inside it, so it's kind of an embarrassing sound to make. Let's see. I don't want this sphere to be inside here as well. I need to cut that, because that will it will try to, if I have this object in there, it will try to resolve that collision, and it will push it out, and that will kind of stop the effect working. So let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to do a group. Yeah, maybe. Whatever kind of gross wet bubble popping sound you want to make is up to you. Bounding object, points or vertices. There we go. So we select the points inside. Maybe I'll blast. I don't know if I want to do it before the edge fracture or after. Let's try it after. Let's just try it before. See what happens. Blast. Group 1. Edge fracture. Now we may end up with a little gap here. Let's go back to... let me just actually merge these in. So yeah, we've got a little gap here, which isn't great. We could increase the resolution of our sphere, which may help overall the kind of sim as well. But we can also sort of push this back in with a little... The Bog of Eternal Stench. Yeah, that's right, John. Good call. Love that movie. Peak Labyrinth, if for all of you kids playing at home, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It's a great movie, especially if you're a David Bowie fan. It's one of the movies that got me interested in this stuff. I wanted to be a puppeteer, but one of my university lecturers told me that there was no future in puppetry, which he was more or less right. There's been a few cool things. Dark Crystal, the recent Dark Crystal series on Netflix, was very cool. But overall, there's not a lot of work in puppetry. So I'm glad that he did push me towards 3D. So let's just check out our attachment constraint here. And there we go. So that's kind of working. Now, I can't really remember if we need to bring this in as a collision object for this attachment to work, but let's see. So I believe that we do. or we could use the pin to animation as well, I suppose. Because we've got these and they are moving. So we could actually turn on pin to animation, but that would also require some more work. So I'll try this attachment one first. And let's see what happens. It looks like they're moving, which is good. So we don't need that. Don't need that in there necessarily. Ah, look at that. Cool. So let's check out this out here with the result. Oh yeah, look at that. That's great. Some weird things going on every so often. But let's create a counter because I think that will be useful. What we'll do is put down a SOP solver, and I'm just going to merge it, I think, in here. And this is running over geometry. So we should see the bubbles come through here. It probably won't update particularly well, but maybe if I run this for a little bit first so that we get a bubble happening. There we go. If we have a look inside the SOP solver, there they are. So we can probably, let's see, how will we start the counter? Hey David, welcome. Good to see you too. I looked at your alien spit that you did, David. I know I talked to you about this in the comments, but yeah, good work on that. I'm glad to see, people following along these streams and getting something useful out of it. So yeah, that's really great. And the fact that you also brought it into Unreal as well is really cool. That is definitely something that I want to look at this year. But all things take time. What do I want to do? I do want to create a counter here, but I'm just not sure how to do it exactly. I can't just say, I count ++ in here because it will. Oh, actually, maybe it'll work. Let's try it. If I just say I count ++ in here, take it out. Hey Ivan, how you going? Welcome. Hey Ivan, I asked you in Slack, but you may not have seen it because it's so late. I asked you if I could share your version of the goo ball, because I thought that would be cool, just to show people what you had done with it as well. So let me know if that's okay, and I'll bring it up. I've got it on. I downloaded it. So SOP solver, attribute wrangle. Yeah. Okay. So let's check this out. Let's see what happens. So hit play. Wow, you've been using it since Unreal 1. That's amazing, David. Yeah. I mean it looks. Oh, cool. Thanks, Ivan. It looks cool. What you can do with it. For me, it's been something of just not having needed to use it until now, but I can see definitely that the industry is switching to, even the film industry is switching to use Unreal or real-time processes nowadays. So I think it is definitely a good thing to learn. But even for your own creation work, I think it looks really kind of impressive and easy to create beautiful looking things in it. All right, so let's take our geometry spreadsheet. It's always weird when you click on a solver, you get the tree view from the dot context. So I usually just put a null down and then I can see. So there's my count going. And it is different for each one. So maybe it'll be good. Let's have a look. What I'm thinking is I'm just going to blast these based on what count value they have. So let's just say @count greater than 4, for instance, and it's I think it's just that point attribute. Yeah, that's right. I think it's a really interesting kind of time where those two industries are, you know, colliding and learning from each other. I think you know, when you talk to people that have been in the film industry for a long time, back when, you know, computers were not as powerful as they are now and the software wasn't as good, we had to use a lot of those kind of optimization techniques that, you know, that games use to you know, just to get things done, like the particle based fire that I was talking about with Lord of the Rings earlier. And yeah, I think some of that stuff has been kind of forgotten about, and not taught anymore. You know, those kind of old techniques aren't really taught because they're not necessary in film these days, because you can just sort of brute force everything. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting seeing these two fields combine again, and, you know, seeing what each field can learn from each other is, you know, it's only going to be a good thing, only going to push things forward. And hopefully new tech comes out of it and new interesting processes come out of it. All right, so let's see if this is working. There we go. So you can see the bubble comes on, it pops for a little bit, and then it disappears. So that count has worked, but I probably want it to be a bit longer. There we go. Let's go 9, maybe 10. Something like that, maybe. We could also put a smooth function in here, and just, if I set this to none, I can actually kind of like smooth these things away. I don't know if I can do this, but let's give it a shot and see. It probably won't work, but I'll give it a go. Let's see. Do this, // null 1, and then if I put @ptnum count, and then the it's just 0 because it's only an integer. I don't think this is going to work. What I was thinking is I could try and pull that count value and do that smoothing, but yeah, it doesn't really seem to want to do that. I was just thinking that maybe it's a little bit abrupt, that removal, and it might be nice to kind of erode that over time, which I'm sure, you know, we could work out some procedural method for doing it, but maybe I'll just make it a bit longer, make it 15. See what that looks like. All right, so let's take a look. We got some bubbles popping. Keep going. So we could probably up the, you know, up the amount. Oh, also, we're only seeing these when they turn on. So we need to also take our live section here. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the other effects could come on and cover that. That's right, John. So let's bring in our live particles as well, because we need to merge those together to get the full complete effect of the bubble growing. So there's our bubbles growing, and then once they hit that dead attribute, then they pop. There we go. So that kind of looks cool. So let's take a look at that. So now we see them growing up and popping when they get to that. Hey, awesome. Could also do something like this as well, where maybe attribute, just thinking about other ways that we could reduce those down to nothing. We could do something like this where we transfer to and from the goo ball color. So if I set that to black, and there'd be numerous ways of doing this, but I like to do it the kind of visual way using color. If I set this to transfer just color, you can see I can sort of have that fade off. So actually, as they get further away from the goo ball, they will be removed. So they'll get black, and I can use that to delete those. So if I just turn this blast off for a second, I could just put a blast in here and say, you know, at cd dot x less than 0.2, for instance. So that's points. And then you can see as they get far away, they just kind of erode off to nothing, which is kind of interesting. They will, if they fall back down and get close, reappear. But yeah, you know, maybe that's kind of okay. So let's take a look at that. Put the color back to white. And smooth does help with this stuff a little bit. So set that to none. Won't have it super strong, but maybe group boundary, unshared edges. Just like that. Just help to smooth out some of those edges, make them a bit softer. So there we go. And you can see them, yeah, just kind of erode as they get far away. It'll just help stop some of those things kind of floating around too much. We also don't have gravity, so we could turn that on and see what that kind of looks like. And we also don't have a collision, which also might help. David, do I hang out on any of the Discord channels? No, I don't. I'm you know, I'm a bit old school in my use of all the various I guess I don't want to say social media because that will make me feel really old, but you know, I'm not super up on all that stuff. But if you have any recommendations of things that I should hang out on, then please let me know. I know that some of the guys in CG Spectrum have a Discord, but if you have any recommendations for good ones that I should check out, then I'd be all ears. But yeah, I'm a bit slow on the uptake on some of this stuff. It took me a while to even get to the streaming stuff, but bit by bit, you know, I'll learn. So let's see. So I've got gravity on now. Now they're sort of falling down, which is kind of interesting. Let's also bring in this goo ball as the real-time VFX channel is pretty good. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. I'm on a couple of the Facebook groups for Houdini, and I think there's a real-time VFX one as well, which I'm on. Which, you know, kind of good. Not that I use Facebook that often, but I think procedural. Oh yeah, cool. I'll have to check it out. So many things to kind of keep on top of. So many channels and forums and stuff. But yeah, I'll have to get on it. We have like an overall one for CG Spectrum, but it's not really that active. Apart from the one that the guys have created for the class. So let's see, out collision VDB, and that one we can just reference that'll be fine. Let's just check the res, that should be okay. So I'm going to bring this in as a collision object now, so static object. Leave the ground plane off, don't think we need that. Sop path, that one for the geometry, use deforming, collisions. Oh yeah, that's right, John, never ends. Hard to keep up with all the various channels and things that you have to pay attention to. But I get a bit bored of, you know, the same old thing every so often, so it's good to, you know, it's good to have new stuff to look at. Alright, so here's our collision. Let's see how this works with the bubbles, because it will help stop them sort of flopping back inside, and it might just help them help it stick to the surface as well, which might be interesting. So let's have a look. It's got those bits that are sort of falling off, which is okay. Oozing through sand or mud. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you could totally do that as well. Have a Vellum sim. It's really not, not that hard. I mean, when it gets into mud and sticky stuff, it's slightly more tricky. But you could definitely do, like, it depends if you want to do it a realistic way, or like you suggest, David, you could do it with a masking type effect. But if you wanted it to actually push, the sand or mud away as it's going through it, then you would probably use vellum grains to do that. Or yeah, it depends. It depends on the level of detail that you want to see there. One thing I'm noticing here is that we're getting the bubbles, obviously, because I didn't set up any random seed on this emission. They're just emitting in the same place every time, which it's not too bad, but you probably would be better if the position was a little bit different every time. So perhaps we just change, what should we do? Should we change the seed? I think we can just have more particles overall in our original emission. I'm going to turn off relax as well. And then on our popnet, we could probably just reduce the rate that they're born so that we don't get too many all at once. Actually, that's not too bad. Let's go back, hit play. Yeah, so that's probably fine. All right, so some are sliding off it. So yeah, let's have a look, John. I think the pieces are sliding off, but the base of the bubble itself should be attached. The pieces don't have anything that's constraining the bubble geometry to the main bit, but the pieces definitely can detach and slide off if they don't have anything that is constraining them. So we have this vellum attach constraint here, and that's what's kind of keeping just the piece of the bubble that is touching the goo ball connected. So those pieces will stay connected and just hang, but the other pieces will kind of be allowed to fly off and do whatever they like. So this might look better with bubbles in more random locations. And then we can give this thickness as well. So we can go and give this maybe a poly extrude. Now I'm sort of, I might just save this as well, because I haven't saved it for a while. Poly extrude, when you don't have geometry, can error. So I'm sort of a little bit hesitant to put it down. One thing that we could do instead is turn this into VDBs and see. Okay, so out live. Oh, now that I've got that as a collision object, it's coming out of my .NET, so I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to bring out the Vellum only. There we go. So let's try doing this as a VDB and see what happens. Take the box sizes down. It's highly likely that poly extrude might work, but just based on my past experience with it, when you have changing point counts and geometry that comes and goes into the poly extrude, it does tend to just die completely. So I'm a little bit reluctant. But one thing that you can do with thin surfaces with VDBs is you can see it doesn't really capture some of these terribly well, but it sort of does, but you can't really see it in this viewport, because you can see when you go wireframe, there is information there. If you use the convert VDB and just use a bit of ISO value to inflate that a little bit, you can see it actually does capture those thin faces. And now I've got like thickness to these bubbles and these pieces, so that when I merge them together, they look a bit more kind of blobby and thick. And in fact, if I don't convert and then do a VDB combine, which I think I'm doing out here anyway. So let me change this out. So I'm going to create a null here, null out bubble, and go back to my goo ball and change that to out bubble. And then we've probably spent enough time on these bubbles, so we'll get going with you know, some other interesting stuff. So let's see, what's this one set to? 0.5, set that to the same. VDB combine, and then convert VDB. Okay, so here is where I need to do that offsetting, but it's also going to offset my goo ball. So, you know, perhaps what I could do instead is use a VDB reshape SDF, and set it to dilate, and that will dilate those bubbles and make them larger. So that might be something better to do there. Let's see if that works. Set that to 0. There we go. So maybe that works better. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of a bit low res, but I don't know, it might look okay. It's kind of weird, but you might be alright. Now let's have a look at these turning into a bit of pyro toxic gas. So what have we got? We've got this dead bubble which spawns for 1 frame, and we can use that to be our emission for our pyro. So I'm going to create another geometry container now and just do a fresh thing where I can object merge in that out dead particle or that out dead sphere. I'm going to peek it in a little bit, so it is definitely inside the geometry or the other bubble mesh, and then do a, let's see, VDB from polygons again, but instead of doing an SDF, I'm going to convert that to density. And that now will be a density sphere every time that those bubbles sort of get to that popping stage. So there we go. It's kind of as easy as that. That creates my density volume. I can now go and create another dot network and Pyro solver. Oh, thanks. Okay. Hey, how you going? Very dirty. Yeah. Gross. So we could, you know, we could fill these with fluid as well that don't have to necessarily be pyro, but that's what we're doing at the moment. So we're going the toxic gas bubble first. Smoke object into Pyro solver, and then a volume source again. And we'll do first context. Operations, we're just going to add density. Okay, go back to the first frame, and I'm just going to set my bounds manually. Which usually I would do this setting up a whole kind of, you know, proper bounds in SOPs before I do this, so I can just bring these in via expressions, but it takes a bit of time to set up, so I'm just going to skip that step. Turn off combustion, I don't need that, and let's just put down a gas resize fluid dynamic as well, so it resizes correctly based on density. And let's see what the first frame is that we get a bubble. Oh, there we go. So we get one on 2. I might not start it. Oh, yeah, that'll be all right. Start it, make it a little bit taller to capture that. Let's hit play and see if we get anything. Delay frames on the resize will help this just kick in when it... There we go. One thing when you have an animated object that's emitting like sporadically like this is that it emits on the first frame and then the resizer kind of goes there, but then it's potentially emitting down here now, and this resizer hasn't really caught up to it. So, David, I think gas, yeah, in this instance, it is just smoke, pyro. It's the same thing. It might be, maybe it was yesterday here, Robert. I don't know about that. But thanks for the heads up. I'll have to go and wish happy International Women's Day, and happy International Women's Day to everybody. March 8th. Oh yeah, it is today. Good one. It's always hard to tell, which hemisphere you're in, which date it is. So what I'm going to do is, on the gas resize fluid dynamic, you have this tracking object. So I can actually feed in this, affects dead as a tracking object maybe, or I might also just bring in the goo ball. So out, goo ball, there we go. And that one will allow me to, object merge 2, I guess. Should probably create a null for that. That will then follow the goo ball no matter where it is. And then we'll see that we get that sporadic emission covered. So yeah, David, gas sim, pyro sim, same thing. They have the same behavior. So I would use pyro or gas for whichever. It's just kind of about the settings that you choose then. We're seeing these dissipate very quickly. So dissipation, I'm going to set that to 0.01. I crank that up to 10, so we should get, a fair amount of density in there. And nothing's happening at the moment because we don't have any velocity. So they're just kind of emitting as a sphere and then not doing anything. So let's give them, we'll do that same thing that we did before where we take the normals of the geometry. So that, and we'll create velocity on those. So v at v equals v at n. And that should give me, there we go. Again, times 10 maybe. VDB from polygons. We can actually do surface attributes here. So could do attribute v and just call that vel or v, whatever you want to call it. Choose the vector type, displacement, velocity. And then in here, we can just add the vel field. Just make sure that I called that correctly. Yes. What's this complaining about? No mesh to convert. There's nothing there on that frame. That's okay. All right, let's see if that brings in some velocities. Houdini just has so many different ways of doing any one thing. Now I'm comfortable with the interface. It's really a matter of solving how to do any given thing. Yeah, that's right, David. It's just like there are so many options in Houdini that, there's no right way or wrong way to do something. And sometimes it's more interesting if you do something that's a little bit different to someone else. Or the so-called correct way. So yeah, I think that's the really kind of interesting thing about it. And it's why you see me when I'm working on this stuff. I'm just kind of really trying to think about, what the best thing to do is, because there are so many options, and it's like, well, I could do this any number of ways. And the way that I choose, is going to end up in a particular result. So yeah, that is a really exciting thing about Houdini, but it is also the kind of challenging thing as well, that it's at the start, it becomes really kind of, I guess just difficult to choose. So I'm going to plug this into velocity update, gas wind. I'm just going to have this blow sort of backwards a little bit. Let's go -1 wind scale. May want to dissipate a little bit. Yeah, I think I'll probably turn the dissipation up maybe a touch. Oh, that gas wind's a little strong. Let me turn that down. I tend though, John, to have dissipation pretty low by default, because you can actually clip it out in the shader. And Yeah, so I'll show you that in a second. It gives me more options if I keep the smoke around long enough. When I get to the kind of rendering stage, it gives me a bit more sort of stuff to work with. Now I'll probably bring in a collision as well so that I can have that as a collider. David, you still have to get a kick out of seeing your VFX on the big screen. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes, depending on what the project is and how into it I am, I'm less kind of excited to see the movie when it has been completed. But, all things in time kind of get forgotten about. And for instance, I saw Aquaman on the TV for the first time the other day. And I worked on that a couple of years ago, I guess. And I was pretty over it by the end because I'd worked on it for, a year or around a year, I think. It was quite long from the initial sort of development and R&D phase to, the final completion. I was pretty kind of, I was pretty over it. I think I had just had a baby as well, so my wife had. So, I probably had other things on my mind. But, yeah, I watched it and I was like, oh, that's really quite cool. The sequence that we worked on, it's over, much faster than you expect. And that can be kind of surprising sometimes when you've worked on something for a whole year and then it only lasts about 10 minutes on screen or even less sometimes. I'm just going to put a null down here and say out goo ball. I'm going to pull this in as a collision object. So yeah, it definitely is exciting. It's exciting to see names in the credits, but sometimes, it can take a while to kind of forget about all the pain and long hours that you went through. But it is very exciting, especially if you go with people from work. It's all big kind of excitement around it. 15-second to 2-minute shots. Yeah, I mean I really like working on short format stuff because it's over a little sooner. Like TV commercials, for instance. It's usually you work quite quickly and you push the thing out pretty quickly, but it's kind of over in maybe a month, a couple of weeks, it might be a couple of months, depending on the size of the project. But it's kind of, when it's done, it's done. And yeah, that's it. You move on to the next thing. And I kind of like that. Sometimes with films, after working on something for a whole year, you're just kind of like, oh, come on. I want to work on something different. I'm sick of doing fire, believe it or not. Although, to be honest, fire is something that I don't often get sick of doing. Yeah, well, yeah, games is a whole different story for timelines, isn't it? I mean, that's crazy. I'm not sure. I think I would possibly get a little over that after the first year, but maybe not. I guess it depends. If the work is varied enough and it just keeps kind of rolling, then maybe it's okay. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're just lucky to have a job in this environment at the moment, so not to be sneezed at. I just really like variety, and you can get that within the same project sometimes, but other projects, where it's just the same thing over and over again, can start to drag on a little bit. What am I doing here? Oh, just create nulls, a bit easier. This one's out collision VDB and out geo. Out col geo. Let's see if this works. So. And I prefer using nulls that are named rather than using like an op input expression, just because it's very clear to me what this is referencing. Well, I can see it and I know, okay, it's collision geo, and I can see where it's coming from as well if it wasn't inside this geo and it's referencing another object. It's very easy, but sometimes with an op input path, it just becomes what am I doing? It just becomes a little bit hard to see sometimes, kind of what you're working on, and you have to jump out to check what it is. So I prefer just to use these paths where I can see what I'm working on. Check the collision guide. That looks okay. Always don't use op inputs. Look, I mean, lots of people do, and it does make certain things easy, but yeah, I prefer just to see paths because it does make it clear to me what's going on very easily. So I'll just turn on the collision guide because it's always important to check the actual collision geometry. And we don't have any velocity on this, which would kind of help, you know. And that's kind of cool. We're getting a little burst there, which is nice. But we're not going to get any inherited motion from this thing because it doesn't actually have a velocity attribute. Now, calculating a velocity attribute from a dynamically created mesh like this is going to not work super well. So I'm going to probably go, let's see, where would I go? Out bubble. Maybe to my original setup for the goo ball. And I might just trail this at this point. Let's see if I've done that already. Don't have a velocity in there, so I'll just chuck one in there. There we go. So that's going to get all that motion. And I'll bring that in. Let's see, where am I? Here. Going to bring that in as another object merge. So sphere 1, out goo ball. There we go. There's my goo ball with velocity. I'm going to let's do a volume rasterize attributes, and I'm going to rasterize that V. There we go. Let's take that res down. Particle scale, we can have it bigger or smaller if we want. Let's just start with something like that, kind of around the size. And null out goo vels. Go back to the start and bring that in as a separate source. So volume source, merge. Now this velocity field is called V. So there it is there. Because it just automatically converts whatever attribute you have into that named field. So you have to repath it. So we don't have density coming in with this one. And we need to pick out goo vels. And we have a source volume called V. And the target field is still vel. So let's check that out. See what that does. Let's turn our collision off. And then we can just assess whether our collision velocities that we've got in here are actually doing anything. And it looks like see that? So it's kind of, this velocity field is pulling that stuff around with it, which is cool. It's probably a little strong, but that's okay. Turn this back on. We can turn this down, 0.5. Just having this extra velocity field in there will help the whole thing kind of feel a bit more connected. Rizwan, you put your monkey head on fire. Cool, sounds good. Where's the monkey head from? Did you model it? And did you do the same fire technique in Lightwave with the particles? All right, so this is super low resolution as well. So if we click on this, 49,000 voxels, that's next to nothing. So let's go take this division size down, 0.1. I'm going to turn on my multi-field visualization, crank up this density here, and diffuse field. We can put density as well. And then let's just choose infrared and kind of visualize this stuff. So what putting this diffuse field density is going to do is when it comes out, it's going to be kind of red. And then as it dissipates, it's going to go towards this purple color. It's primitive in Blender. Oh, monkey head primitive. Cool. Sounds good. I like the pig head primitive in Houdini. Monkey head sounds great. you could do like a monkey head brain simulation or something, like in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I like that scene. So there we go. Now we've got this kind of bubble popping simulation. Let's bring this out so we can have a look at all our effects together. So dop import node, that would be the smoke object. Smoke, there we go. All right, let's create a volume visualization so we can check what this looks like in the viewport. Density, and yeah, we don't really need a diffuse field in here, but yeah, we can if we want. Monkey head on fire is on my YouTube channel. Oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out. Post the link, Rizwan. I'll grab it and have a look after. I guess, yeah, I'll put density in here and choose infrared just so I can see something in here. Some different colors. And in fact, you know, we could just go for like a toxic Avengers green. Are all my references a bit too 80s for everybody? Probably. Let's have a look at our density values as well. If we turn on compute min max, we can have a look at our geometry spreadsheet. Look at our primitives, and we can see that our maximum density is 9 at this particular frame. It's going up and down, but that helps us to determine a range for these colors as well. So 0 to 9 will give me a better kind of fall off in our color range. I knew you would be, John. I thought you'd like that. So not too obscure for me. Oh, nice. Yeah, cool. Basket case. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. I was trying to remember. I'll have to look at it again. It's been a while since I've looked at it. That's hilarious. We should do more Toxic Avenger style effects. Make some extra gross things. So here we go. We've got some popping bubbles. Let's just see, what are we looking at here? So we don't need to view our bubble effects. We've got our goo ball. Let's set that to be there. And maybe I'll turn off the slime for a moment because that's kind of interfering with the bubbles, I think, and the chunks. Still have to kind of work out how this is going to work overall with everything. Let's see what happens. That's what a great story that is, David. So it seems like it's kind of working, although it looks like there's a few kind of intersections, I guess, happening. Perhaps the collisions aren't quite, you know, keeping this stuff in. Let's have a look back at our Pyro and take a look at our collision geometry. So I guess maybe the velocities as well are pretty strong, so that might be a factor. We could also potentially peak these in to be a little smaller still, and that might help them be inside the bubble that gets created. Oh, that's pretty big. Maybe that's why. Let's take this down a little bit. That could be why as well. The resolution might just be a bit low. From lunch to thrown out twin. Yeah, this is the discarded twin. It's starting to ring a bell. I'll have to watch it again. Might be good. I occasionally like watching you know, cartoons for inspiration in effects, because you often see some really bizarre kind of things and sometimes beautiful things as well. I remember I had to do like a growing effect once, plants growing up. When a creature sort of walked, there were plants that grew up and died behind it. It was very kind of reminiscent of something that happens in Princess Mononoke, the Studio Ghibli film. So I always watch that stuff like for reference, because it gives you this really kind of creative, I guess, creative approach to a problem. Rather than always looking at realistic stuff, it's sometimes really good to look at beautiful 2D animation and see how they kind of do things, and see if you can bring that to your sort of realistic 3D effects. Because often they are really considering things from an artistic standpoint that sometimes we don't always, we lose sight of in the chase for creating an interesting effect in 3D. We sort of lose sight of the artistic side of creation, which is a mistake, because it's all about creating art, really. So there we go. I mean, there's a bit of a disconnect happening here, and I think that might just be maybe our velocity is a little bit too high, so we could turn that down. Maybe even they don't need to be so so high. Gooball, what are we looking at here? So view flag there. There's definitely some refinement, that needs to be done in the meshing. That green gas looks smelly. Yeah, that's right. Gross. There's definitely some refinement that needs to kind of happen, I think. Oh, and look, now we're not getting some of these bubbles aren't popping, which is a bit concerning. Let's have a look at why that might be. Here's our VDB. I think maybe our peak. Oh, let's have a look. So it's kind of hard to tell. Where are we? Here. So we've got this one. So there should really be a ball being created here. Ah, there it is there. And then the peak is sort of tucking that right in. The VDB. Oh, so it is being created, but perhaps it's just being killed by the collision. Yeah, I think that's what's going on. I think it's... So maybe if I don't peak it so much, I think it's just being completely removed by the collision field. And we can, yeah, should be alright. Let's try again, see if that captures it anymore. That's right. Go the old Heston Blumenthal trick, make it look like something different, and actually it smells beautiful. Maybe the velocities are just too insane. I think they're just too crazy. What else could we do? You could emit some sort of like spores as well from this thing, just to think about all the kind of weird things that you could do with it. You could emit some particles at the same time, because we've got that sphere. The question is, will the chunks show through the bubbles? Well, yeah, I mean, probably. It depends, I guess, how we shade them. Yeah, I think the mesh, definitely needs work. Although this is just the collision display at the moment. Let's have a look. So what I was talking about before with, dissipation, John, you were talking about how there's too much smoke, and yes, I agree. But what you can do is clip out the low range there. See how I can basically erode that away to nothing? And now I get them sort of dissipating sooner. So there's a lot more to work with in terms of post-simulation, rather than having all that dissipation in the simulation itself, and then if I want to change it, I have to re-simulate. I can just clip out the low range, and it means I don't have to re-simulate if I want to change the way that it fades. Sometimes that can be a little clippy and you do actually need to up the dissipation, but yeah, as a rule, I tend to have them dissipate quite little and then just try and control it with the shader. It's a lot, it's a lot more flexible that way. Let's take a look at this. So definitely needs some refinement, but as a proof of concept and just a bit of R&D, it's kind of working. I think velocity still seems a little strong, maybe. Maybe we don't really have too much velocity at all. The other thing we could do, of course, is potentially shift the emission so that at the moment we're sort of emitting at the same time that this bubble turns into vellum, but perhaps we could choose a different count frame to sample so that they come on at a slightly different time, which would just mean that we had to kind of go back here and maybe pick our particles before the count. So if we take that out there, say out before dead, take this blast here, and then object merge out before dead, and then we can do our own cull here. So we could just say, greater than, maybe we'll just say equals 3. Oh, equals 3. Does that work? Maybe it doesn't work in a blast. Greater than 2. Oh, look at that. And they still disappear. Greater than 2, 3. Oh, there we go. So it comes on, so it comes on after it's been switched to the dead side. So it only will come on when the particle is born, and then it's emitting now for 3 frames until it dies. So instead of doing 1 frame of emission, maybe that'll be better. I don't know. Might be worse. 3 frames of emission. Let's try that. And I'm gonna turn the velocity off as well, because maybe it doesn't need it. There's velocity coming from the collision object now as well, so that might be enough. Yeah, that's right. Maybe that build up. I mean, collisions with moving geometry, and often when you have thin surfaced collisions as well, very thin faces, that could cause things to, it just might not look that great. It might come through the collision. It's always slightly difficult to sort of rectify that. Maybe all this strong velocity is actually coming from the collision object. So I might just turn this right down. See if that makes any difference. So let's see. I think also what we're getting here is velocity coming from the collision geometry. So the trail that we put on there, out goo ball. Oh, not that one. Oh no, we don't have velocity coming from here. I wonder if it's automatically creating that. Turn that off and see what happens. Let's just check this out. So I might just, we've got V coming from the particles still, so I'm just gonna, maybe on the source actually, I'll just turn that off. Let's see if this works. There we go, so they're not moving again, that's good. So let's just turn this back on, and we can set this to be 0.1. See what happens now. Yeah, they're really getting kind of squirted out by that collision. It's really kind of interesting. Turn that off. Let's check out our advanced tab. Collisions, correct collisions, that's okay. Relationships, collisions, relationship. Use point velocity for collisions. Perhaps we'll turn that off. Let's see if that removes the sort of fast motion that's coming from this collider. Yeah, so that did. So maybe there's some sort of automatic trail that's going on inside the solver, which is doing its own calculation of that collision geometry, which isn't great, but you can turn it off, which is good. So we could just bring in our own velocity field now here, and hopefully then that will work a little better. Let's see. Now we can just really control it with the scale if we wanted it to be less or more. There we go. So that might be a bit more interesting. So that, yeah, I think all those weird velocities were coming from, what I was talking about exactly before, was that if you tried to do a trail from this dynamically created mesh, it generates just random crazy velocities all over the place every frame, because there's no constant point count. But it looks like it was doing that in the .NET anyway. So that's why we were just getting stuff being thrown everywhere. Now we can probably turn this back on. This velocity. I'll just leave that as 1 and then set this to, 1. Now it'll probably work a little bit better maybe. I think all the issues that we were having were probably from the velocity being generated by this mesh that we had. So there we go. That's working a little better. Hey. Okay, so let's put this up to 5 now. It's always annoying, when you work that stuff out. There's no time stretch calculating point positions. Well, the thing is, John, with this mesh is that it's being generated from a VDB, and the convert VDB step, it doesn't, it's just every frame it's recalculating that stuff. The point count is changing, the order might be changing. So when you do a trail from 2 different frames where the position is changing, because the point count changes, those trails don't match up, and it will just create, it'll look for a different point, or it'll, be looking for that point that was there, but now it's here, so the velocity just is different. And that is over the whole mesh, so it'll just create this really random, crazy mesh. And because points are jumping in frames, it thinks that that's a big movement, so it gets a massive vector trail, which is what was causing that to shoot out all the time. That's why it wasn't really working. You can see now, when that pops, that really pops, and it looks kind of like it should. Up here, it's a little bit of weirdness going on, but now it's kind of getting surrounded in this cloud, which is sort of what I was hoping to see. So let's have a look at that. There we go. All right. So, this bit probably isn't great, but we could start the simulation a little later. Let's have a look at this. Yeah. So you can see even our normal base velocity can be cranked up quite a bit now to make that work. Hey, Duncan, how you going? We're almost finished today, but I'm here every week, so please come and join me and, creating some weird stuff every week. Yeah, this is part 2 on this effect as well. And if the link for last week's one is in the description. So go and check it out, and then you can follow on with this one after, if you like. I should show you this. So this is not my version. This is one of my students, Ivan, at CG Spectrum. Oh, that's not playing back very well. Let me see. See if I can reload it. Oh, weird. Let me just load it again. It might not actually play back terribly well over stream, but let's try this. Here we go. So this was the kind of effect, and this is my student Ivan's work, and it's great. You know, he followed along with the stream, which was awesome, because I wasn't necessarily explaining everything that I was doing, and he managed not to get an error in his boolean, which is great. I really like the way that these feel kind of really embedded, and it feels quite gooey as well, because they're kind of this feeling of them moving around inside is really, really nice. So yeah, definitely, you know, check out part one. There we go, look at that nice bubble popping. Ready? Watch this one. I think we can go even higher on that. It's always annoying when you're trying to, you know, do stuff and you don't get the result that you're sort of expecting, and you keep working with it and trying to force it to do its thing, and at the end of the day it was some other issue that was causing the problem that you were trying to solve. That's always frustrating. You can waste a lot of hours, you know, trying to solve things like that. I think we should probably also put a ground plane on here. Or actually, what we could do is we've got our... Let's check out our Pyro bounds. I'm just going to raise this up to be at world 0. And I can actually just do this, copy the Y height, paste relative references, divide by 2. And that will give me perfect 0 flat ground plane there. And that will work okay for this ground collision. So I'll turn on closed boundaries and just do negative Y. Hey, no worries, Ivan. I hope see if you can do something along these lines as well. I don't know. This is kind of working. I think it could get there. It just needs a bit of refinement. The way that the bubbles are popping, I think needs a little bit of work, and you know, trying to resolve, I guess, that mesh and how it dies, or maybe it doesn't die. Maybe it just stays there, and you just kind of have it there, and it falls down on the ground, and that's it. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the answer is, but these things, you know, take time to resolve and to make them into the final effect. There we go. So I think we can turn this up as well now. Now that everything's kind of working a little better. Let's just set that to 1 and see. That point calculation was really screwing the effect. While I'm at it, I will just up that a little bit. And we haven't added any shaping either. Not that we necessarily need it for an effect like this. It's going to be a kind of, you know, toxic green cloud, so it doesn't necessarily need a lot of disturbance and breakup. The motion from the collisions is enough as well to kind of swirl this stuff around, so you don't need loads of turbulence or other stuff. You can see it's now moving along the ground because we turned on that closed boundary of the negative Y, so we're going to have that colliding along the ground. Let's have a look at this now. That one was cool. Some of them work better than others, and I think, you know, the mesh of this kind of probably needs a little bit of refinement. Let's see, because we've got our goo ball here. I haven't got this side of it hooked up, and I could probably do that, but let's just see what this looks like. I'll set up a quick shader. Actually, let me go and save this. Go to my render view. Just check out my mantra node. What am I using here? Objects, slime, goo ball, chunks. Let's just see what this kind of looks like. Let me check my my view flags as well. Slime. The slime needs to be updated, I think, because it doesn't now match our outer surface that we've got. So we'll need to update that one. Let me just turn that one off for now. Set it to exclude. And let's check it out. Render. And then I'll just, while that's rendering, I'll just create a quick material. So I'm just going to create a really quick volume shader for this. So I use the volume shader core. Oops, actually just volume shader. Wow, look at that crazy kind of fleshy thing. Volume shader core. Is that what I want? Oh yes, it is right. Volume shader core, and then I need a compute lighting node. So layer into layer, and then CF, OF, and F. And then I actually think this works without even binding density. Hey Matt, thanks. Yeah, this is looking pretty gross. I think I'm not getting that internal shadowing happening because I don't have the I don't have those chunks in there at the moment, or they're not booleaned out yet. I guess we could just merge. Maybe we can just merge them in like we were doing last time. Let's do this merge. Ah, there we go. So you see how that adds that little bit of shadowing, and maybe overall my my shader needs a bit of work. So perhaps the subsurface. Oh, what shade is this one? This one's chunks. It's not a great name for that one. You know, perhaps the subsurface effect could be increased. There we go. Looks kind of cool. All right, so let's call this smoke mutant chocolate chip cookie. Yeah, that's right. It's you can see the bubbles look quite cool. You could also potentially drive that bubble by an attribute as well, which could be interesting. So if we went back here to our bubbles, let's have a look at that. So we've got those and out before dead. So those are popping. Are they popping off? No. YouTuber slime. Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't want to get that dropped on my head. Oh, do you mean the sparkle? Well, we should do a sparkly version. Out live. Maybe that's the one that we want. Yeah, let's do out live. What do we want to do? Out live, out dead. What I'm thinking is we can use these to transfer some attribute that we could drive subsurface value based on. I don't know, maybe I won't mess with that right now. Let's just get our smoke in there and see what happens. So we'll apply this material. We've got smoke. Yeah, I haven't bound anything into this, but let's just see if it works as a shader, first of all. So it's called smoke. I don't know what to tell you, Robert. I don't always use sound effects. Just when it calls for it. I don't think these need sound effects. What am I typing? Smoke. Wow, that broke everything. That is sometimes a bit of an issue when you rename nodes after you've created a dot network, because all the references break. I probably just needed to resimulate, but yeah, I'll just leave that as Geo1. Out. Let's just create a separate mantra node for testing, and I'll call this one Geo1 just so we can try out our shader. So smoke render material, go back in here, so hopefully we'll see something show up. Oh, there we go. So yeah, we probably do need to bind. You can see it's working, it's doing something, but we need to bind density in here. And that should hopefully, oh no. I guess, let's see, density scale. Oh, we do have really low pixel samples as well. So that's probably part of why it looks horrible. Let's set it to green. There we go, something like that. And I'm just gonna put a fit range in here. And then a ramp. And that will kind of mimic the the volume visualization sort of stuff that we had, so I can clip out the low range. There you go. And there's a setting on the mantra node. If I go to smoke, rendering, stochastic samples, if I turn that up, that should enhance the smoke effect without really affecting the rest of the simulation. So, alright, so let's go back to the other mantra node, do the same thing, 32, and objects, geo1, flip that over, render, see what we get. So yeah, I really like creating these very simple volume shaders rather than using the Pyro shader. It's a lot easier because it's just very, very simple and I can get exactly what I want out of it. So again, we could go back here and just clip that out. Could always take this down. I feel like the green is kind of a bit weird. I mean, it doesn't sort of match with the color palette of the effect. So, you know, perhaps some other color might be more appropriate. Yeah, that's right. Hopefully that satisfies your toxic gas needs, Audrey. Maybe add some yellow to it. Yeah, definitely. I think definitely it needs some refinement. We just need to work on kind of this mesh, this bubble mesh, and try and just make it as, you know, non kind of dodgy as possible. And just, I mean, maybe we don't even need to do the whole VDB convert and combine. We may just be able to render the bubble geometry as is and just take our kind of original goo ball mesh and merge those together. That might be okay. I don't know. Just needs, you know, you got to test these things and just see how they work. That may kind of work a little bit better, but those very thin edges as well might not render terribly well. Oh, yeah, I don't know. It's just something that need to test. They look quite cool like this. You can see, you know, when you see those cracking. But when we have them like this, it's a little bit different. I guess it's kind of, yeah, I think we're probably just inflating, or I keep saying we, but I'm making most of these choices. I'm probably just inflating it a little much. Maybe that's the problem. You can see when I don't do it enough, they disappear completely, but perhaps just finding that sweet spot of inflation, you know, now we get these kind of really interesting things happening. Yeah, that's not too bad. We could always turn on our slime and see what happens with that. I feel like that definitely needs to be changed, but turn it on, see what we get. Might do some weird stuff. Don't have the bubbles as part of the slime, so I guess maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good thing. So weird. Chunks. Do we have them turned on? Yeah. Oh, there we go. So probably have to cook the top. Yeah. But yeah, there you go. Mustard gas. Mustard gas. I don't know what it is anymore. Custard. Custard with obsidian chunks. I still want to make those teeth. I think that would be just great. It's super gross. I think this gas, I mean, you know, I would have to render this out to see, but I can see some pretty strong velocities here, you know, really shooting this stuff out. So I think that certainly needs to be adjusted. But there's some really cool stuff happening with the bubbles here. So even, you know, just doing a render to check what the bubbles look like. over their time. You can see like this one catching the light here looks super cool. And if we go forward and see if we can find any others. Yeah, I think the finer result there looks a lot better with that dilate being so strong. So that's cool. And then perhaps, you know, it'd be better if I just let the simulation run its course with these bubble pieces so they don't erode completely. You know, I've got that final little CD erosion there. Perhaps I just leave that off and let them kind of fly around and do their own weird thing. They may just erode by themselves as well with the VDB. Might work, I don't know. But anyway, I'm out of time. I hope you've enjoyed watching me add more weirdness to this goo ball. I might do a render over the week of everything, make a few tweaks to the smoke sim and set it off at a higher resolution, and we can have a look at the result next week before we talk about anything else. Hey, no worries, Audrey. Thanks for joining me again, and thanks for the suggestion. Always welcome suggestions for stuff to work on. Helps me think of new and interesting ways of working. And you can see those bubbles kind of adding some interesting stuff to the mesh. So I'll definitely render this out, and we'll take a look at it next week. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Duncan, for joining me. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week. If anyone has, you know, any questions, or feel free to message in the comments, and I'll get back to you. And yeah, if you're interested, you know, in these streams, I think this is the 8th VFX stream, so there's quite a few for you to go back over if you're interested, and certainly part 1 of this one is linked below in the comments. And yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Okay, thanks for joining me. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week, everybody.